Genesis means back to basics, back to the beginning. So I'd like for us to go there together this morning in our first reading. The story has accumulated layers and a heavy freight of interpretation down through the years. Let's see if we can give it a fresh hearing here this morning. God created the heavens and the earth. In God's image and by a commanding word, God created the first human creature and placed him in the garden, earthling to earth, in a tender and interdependent relationship. The human creature cares for the garden and walks softly upon it. The garden sustains the human being. This garden is no static paradise. God gives Adam, the human creature, a job in the garden. The garden requires attention, intention, care, and work. The human role is to tend the garden the way a shepherd keeps sheep, gently and attentively. God also gives Adam, the human creature, a permit in the garden. Almost all the vegetation and trees are available for shade, ease, joy, and well-being. There is permission in the garden. Freely eat of all that. Enjoy. Bon appetit. There in God's garden is a tree of life. Adam may eat the fruit from this nourishing tree. This is a gracious gift. God also gives Adam a human partner, Eve, to live and serve side by side in the garden. Very equal relationship. This is a gracious gift indeed. She becomes a partner, a counterpart in the garden's work and pleasure. She too, with Adam, tends the garden as a shepherd, and the garden sustains her. Both Adam and Eve are given limits in God's garden. There is this second tree, the one offering knowledge of good and evil. A crucial boundary surrounds this particular tree. The foundational relation between creatures and Creator can be skewed and scrambled if the human beings cross over to grab the wise fruit from this certain tree. God commands Adam and Eve not to trespass this line, for then it becomes a deadline. Adam and Eve disobey God's instruction not to eat fruit from this certain tree. They had the opportunity to eat from all the other trees. Of course, the sneaky serpent helps by making it sound like God's instructions are not such a big deal. Both members of the human partnership share the blame for this rebellion in spite of the whole history of placing it all upon Eve. Adam and Eve each have a distinctive part to play in the story, but both are responsible. This episode is sometimes known as the fall. It is humanity's fall from grace, away from receptive creatureliness, away from innocence, away from God, away from the harmony and ecology of balance and tenderness. A part of the mystery of this fall is that Adam and Eve get too big for their britches, except this doesn't quite fit because he didn't even have britches yet. That will change with the shame. Notice, however, that Adam and Eve don't really fall down, but fall up. They were not content with their place, even though the place was wonderful. They wanted to cross the line and be like God. Adam and Eve are not satisfied to be creatures. They aspire to be like God. They fall up. Sisters and brothers, the value of this story is that it describes who we are. The story is our story. It narrates our prideful, broken, infinite, limited, bound to screw up lives. Yes, it makes sense. Ever wanted to push a boundary? Ever found yourself exercising judgment as if you had God's judgment? Ever wanted to be good but couldn't? Ever wanted to stop being bad but didn't? Ever wondered how the goodness of a situation could get so misconstrued and misdirected and miscommunicated? Ever wondered how people could be good in the worst sense of the word? We are all products and participants in this fall. We are captive to sin and cannot free ourselves. We cross the line and assume roles never proper for our creatureliness. We turn from grateful receivers to captains of our own fate. Thank God the story does not end here. St. Paul reminds us in our second reading with his inspiring compare and contrast in Romans 5. A second Adam ensures that the story will continue. If the first Adam messed up, how much more Christ, the second Adam, brings new life to the garden. Yes, we are all Adam and Eve, and we get a second chance through the second Adam. Yes, sin came into the world through the first Adam, and sin and its consequence of death spread to all creation, and many days it seems that this is the only empirical reality we know and experience. But even as Adam and Eve began a storied history of fallen humanity characterized by sin, death, and the power of evil, so Christ opened up a new present and future for humanity characterized by forgiveness, new life, and victory over sin, death, and the power of evil. Christ's achievement centered around another tree formed into a cross is far greater than Adam's. The early church fathers and mothers often compared the living tree brings death and the dead tree brings new life. Theologians call this the sweet swap. The free gift of grace through Jesus Christ far surpasses the reality of our sinfulness. So we are called today to turn our eyes and hearts to Jesus and stand at the fruit and foot of the cross. We are called to place our full trust in the second Adam and to place ourselves squarely in the promise put very well in this verse from the 19th century poet John Henry Newman. O living wisdom of our God, when all was sin and shame, a second Adam to the fight and to the rescue came. O wisest love, that flesh and blood, which did in Adam fail, should strive afresh against the foe